two, three.
All right. So apparently, there's certain kinds of things that the Gen Z, which is the 20 something people, struggle with the most. You talk about bank. I didn't think that that was one of them from my experience because I didn't think that you're expected to have zeros in the bank account at in your 20s. But I know that they struggle with relationships. To me, that's the one that I see. So, in your experience, in your book, and what you've talked to millions of thousands of people, what are some of the things that this Gen Z, um, uh, you know, suffer struggle with the most as
Yeah,
far as
great question.
hierarchy?
Yeah, I mean, I can literally give you a hierarchy because I I am a geriatric millennial. I'm an older millennial, so I was acutely aware that the challenges I faced in my 20s might not be the same as those that current 20 somethings were facing. So I went back, I did this huge survey of 2,500 women in their 20s in the UK and the US, and I use a huge amount of data in my work because I'm a geek and I love that stuff. Um, and what was actually, incredible and also a bit sad is 95% of them had fears about the future. They had fears about getting older. And the biggest fears were, the number one fear was kind of aging itself, and the mental and physical health consequences that came along with aging. And this, particularly the focus on mental health and getting mentally resilient, that was a life goal that my generation didn't even think about. That was before mental health was really on the table for a conversation. So that was a huge shift that I saw between the two generations. So 10 years apart, and they were prioritizing their mental health, which I think is a great thing. But they're also struggling so much with their mental health.
This year, skip breaking a sweat and get 3 months unlimited mobile service at mintmobile.com/transform for just $15 a month. Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Kate Burski, mental health advocate. And Kate and I are going to be talking on a topic today: what's behind the Gen Z mental health crisis? Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite topic.
Yes, yes, and I am so glad to be bringing some information for a target audience, the Gen Zs, which, I don't normally have a lot of information that's directed at that target market. But as we were saying before we started the recording, this information can work for any age. But, today we're saying these are some of the problems that the Gen Z are having for their mental health, but it can be expanded to 30s, 40s, 50s, because everybody has the same issues. It just starts younger.
Exactly,
Yes, yes.
exactly.
Amazing. All right, so let me give you guys a brief introduction. Kate Burski is a self-made multimillionaire and mental health advocate who survived the challenges of her 20s and is now dedicated to helping others do the same. Her unique blend of honesty, vulnerability, and expertise has made her a voice of hope for young adults around the world. In her bold and deeply relatable new book, 30 Phobia: Why Your 20s Suck and How to Get Unstuck, Kate pulls back the curtain on the myth that your 20s are your best years of your life and shows why they often aren't. Kate reveals the trauma, self doubt, and relentless fear of running out of time that plagued her during her 20s. But it's precisely these struggles that make her story so compelling and her advice so transformative. In 30 Phobia, Kate blends her personal journey with insights from over 40 global experts, offering grounded, actionable advice for 20 somethings navigating the pressures of relationships, careers, money, and identity. Awesome. All right. So, it's a strange topic because we don't think that 20 somethings have challenges, but apparently they do. And it's a mental health crisis. So, can we start with yours? What are some of the challenges you faced in your 20s that you had to overcome, Kate?
Thanks, Myrna. So, yeah, I'm Kate Burski. I'm an entrepreneur turned writer and content creator. And as you said, I'm passionate about helping young women, particularly, get unstuck and just feel better about the pressures of life. So, definitely being that message of hope. Um, there, there definitely is a mental health crisis amongst Gen Z right now, and it's kind of twofold. So, I think 20 somethings, myself included, have always faced a huge amount of challenge. It's really the decade of uncertainty when you're in your 20s. I mean, you're expected to figure out every aspect of your life, from who you're going to end up with to your career path. You need to get your finances sorted, and you're given a very short amount of time in which to kind of get all of your ducks in a row. And I think I, like so many young people in their 20s, kind of experience that internalized timeline that we don't realize is ticking until it starts to put pressure on us. So I think from a young age, especially women, we seem to be socialized to kind of go through life ticking these boxes. Like, you finish your education, then you meet the person, then you settle down and you buy a house and you get financially secure and you save money and you get the dog, yada, yada, yada. And I had always, like so many young women, assumed that that would happen for me. And yet, I reached my late 20s, having always been kind of an overachiever. I was doing really well with my career, but I suddenly started looking around thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be 30 soon, and I haven't ticked a single one of these boxes that I expected to be ticking by this age. Life doesn't look how I expected it was going to at 30. I am not going to be married. I'm not going to be a homeowner. I don't even have a car. I've got, minus money in the bank. And I just had a full blown quarter life crisis. Really, that feeling of I'm running out of time, I'm falling behind. Everybody else has got all of this life stuff figured out, and I'm the only one who's struggling. I'm the only one who's failing and flailing and falling behind. And it's a feeling that I hear from so many women that I speak to, and young men as well. And I just want to, help young people overcome the crisis that I experienced, because it took a lot of heartache and a lot of internal work, all of which has gone into the book, to kind of get past that and get unstuck. And by the end of that decade, the crisis culminated in a very uncool girl moment where I felt the panic. I was like, I need to have a ring on my finger by the time I turn 30. So I issued my then boyfriend with a very cool marriage ultimatum, which he sensibly declined. And that hard stop kind of forced me to reevaluate everything at the age of 30. It was the first time in my life that I'd ever thought to question, what are all these expectations? Where are they coming from? When did I sign up to this tick list of things that I'm supposed to be checking off? And is this even right for me anyway? And it was only really then that I realized, hang on, as much as I feel like I should have a husband, a dog, a house, and a car, and all those things, maybe that's not actually the kind of life that I want for myself right now. And it was the first time I allowed myself to throw away the rule book and write a new definition of success that didn't include any deadlines. It was, instead of getting married and settling down, the life I wanted to build was more like, I want to move abroad. I want to live in lots of different countries, meet lots of different people. I don't want to be tied to one city. I don't want to be kind of financially tied in. I want to actually start a business and make myself deliberately financially insecure. So all of those things were incompatible with the shoulds that I had in my mind. So it was just really a turning point. And when I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to finally sort of live my dream of writing this book that was in my head, I wanted to go back to that time, that turning point in my life, because for me, for so many people, a decade makes all the difference. I started my 30s without a penny in the bank. I wasn't a homeowner, I wasn't married, I didn't have kids. I didn't really know where I was going. I was burning out in my career. And by the end of that decade, I was a self-made millionaire. I was married. I had become a mother. I had lived in 4 different countries, and I was living my best life. So a decade made all the difference. And what started it was that mindset shift. So I want to help everybody else go on that journey and hopefully go on it quicker than I did as well.
Wow, that is awesome. Now, when you first started talking, I had to remember, um, yes, I think that, maybe in the, you know, earlier I mean, I'm trying to figure which decade it was, whether it's the 60s, 70s, 80s, or even 90s, where, yes, women were graduating from school and, they're looking for the boy to put a ring on it and they're going into their careers and all that. But I personally thought that that started to shift where people were not going after what they wanted until maybe in their 35 has now become the new norm. So when you first started talking, I'm thinking to myself, wow, there's a shift that happened because you're right. A lot of people don't have it at 25 and 30 and checking all those boxes. And they decided to delay those things where that's why women are now being pregnant in their 40s. But I love the mindset shift that happened with you as well, because, I remember, it's really a funny story, but I remember when I left school, my father was, teaching university, had his PhD and all that. And I specifically told him, I says, you know what? There's no point in me going to university. I'm just going to get married. So
Wow.
well, what happened with you, I think, is that instead of you thinking that you needed a man or, all these different things to make you whole, you had the shift of, I am going to do it on my own. And then when you shifted that, you still had all those things. We don't walk around saying that, I need a man to a husband and all these things, the house and the dog and marriage and all these different things to make me whole. Because what it said is that somebody else has to complete you. So I love
Yeah.
that. And when we decided to, be whole by ourselves, that's when we attract the beautiful life that you have. So I love that mindset shift. But if you were to stick on that for a little bit, what was the catalyst for that? How did you go from feeling that you were a failure to deciding that you were going to go after something else?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the hard stop of kind of being rejected and being like, okay, well, someone else has kind of told me that I'm not going to get, the dream. Um, so yeah, you feel sorry for yourself, you lick your wounds for a little while, and then it makes you stop and think. And it really was just that self-reflection. I think so often we're so busy and we're so chasing the next goal all the way through our lives, especially as young adults, we're so busy and I finally took a pause. I moved out to Australia. So my company, I was lucky I worked for a company at the time where they had offices all over the world, and I took a secondment to Australia. And that was really just a really great reset. And I'm not saying you have to be, the other side of the world to kind of reset and rewind and rethink, but it really helped kind of that change of mood, that change of pace. The pace of life was much slower than it was in London, which is where I just moved from. And it gave me that pause to, I spent a lot of time on my own. I didn't know too many people. And, I really started doing that inner work. And I started just asking myself questions. So a lot of the work that I do, the book that I've written is about asking yourself questions. So, where did these expectations come from? Even what I'm really interested in what language people use to describe their pressures and their challenges, because so often when you speak to young people, any people, they'll say should. They'll start shoulding all over themselves. I should be doing this by now. I should have more money. I should be in a relationship. I should. And if you can't reframe that should as a want or a need, maybe it's not really your want or need anyway. And that's what happened to me. I was like, okay, society's telling me I should be married. I'm telling myself I should be married. But what do I actually want? I don't want that. And it was only asking the question. So it's really just, I want to encourage everybody to just take pause, take stock, ask yourself those challenging questions. And I've even created a game that will help people do it. It's called Mind Hacker Cards. And anyone can download it from my website, kateburski.com. It's just really a set of conversation cards that helps you start that process of stopping, pausing, questioning whether these are really priorities for you right now. Because a lot of these things are real life goals, but they might not be your priority right now. Because we know as humans, you can have it all, you can do it all, but just not all at the same time. So you got to kind of prioritize, figure out what you're doing right now, and take a little bit of pressure off, take a little bit of baggage away. So if I can help anyone do that, that is, mission complete.
Okay. Yeah. So that was great. So, yeah, I understand the shift from, by 30, because yes, a lot of people have that. They're in 28, 29, 30. That used to be the number that yes, you should be married and have this great job and do all the things that society says that you should. But then people are starting to push it back. So I have a question here for the older folks that are listening to this. So you accomplished yours at 40. So you didn't feel like a failure anymore because between 30 and 40, you checked all those boxes. What happens if somebody is listening right now and it still hasn't happened for them for 40? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, it's an amazing question. And I would say I also, in that process, reframed my definition of success. I think in my 20s, I used to define success as a list of accolades, the things I got, the things I can measure, the things I can count, things I can tell someone at a dinner party. Now I feel success is a feeling. And what's interesting is my husband and I started a hair care brand, and we worked incredibly hard over a very short period of time. And we were fortunate enough to exit that brand and sell it for a big sum. So we experienced that kind of financial dream moment that many people don't get to. I didn't feel successful in that moment. It felt very different than how I expected. In fact, I didn't start to feel successful in life until nearly 3 years later, when it wasn't, because I realized it wasn't really about the money and about that huge tick box. It was really, can I build a life that is healthy, sustainable, that I can spend time with my family, I can have time to exercise, that I can have time to eat well, that I can live in a country that I love, that makes me feel good. And that didn't happen till a few years down the line. So it wasn't really when I ticked the box, it was when I reframed what success was, and it was a feeling of being aligned. And I think you asked earlier about how do we know how to reframe. I think your body will tell you. If you just keep going and keep going towards goals and you're living a misaligned life, you will one day have that feeling, that sinking feeling. It also happens to people who achieve all the things that they expect that's going to make them happy. So I know so many people that have gone through all the check boxes really young, got an amazing job, super well off, got married, had the children, and then they've woken up in their mid 30s and thought, I am deeply unhappy. This is not fulfilling me. This is the life I should be living. It's not the life I want to be living.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think everybody, I think a lot of us, we're living life in the waiting room. The most common phrase, apart from I'm running out of time, that I hear is, I'll be happy when dot, dot, dot.
Right.
I'll be happy when I meet the man. I'll be happy when I've got this amount of zeros in my bank account. I'll be happy when I've got this job title, this home, this car. And we have to start being happy now. We have to learn and exercise that muscle of being happy now. And as cheesy as it sounds, it's things like gratitude, it's things like celebrating the small wins. I think as a society, we're so good at celebrating the big wins. We're so good at saying, wow, congratulations, you got engaged, you had a baby, you bought a house. But we don't celebrate those small wins that real people are achieving every day. And, one thing I love to do on my Instagram is just send a shout out, like, everybody tell me your small wins. And it's just amazing. It's heartwarming what comes back, because it's everything from I became a pet parent to, I took my first driving lesson at the age of 45 to, I got out of bed after a really difficult spell of, mental health troubles. So, people are winning all the time. And I think wherever you're at in life, there are things to celebrate and there are wins that you're making. You just need to focus on them and, find ways to be happy now. So it definitely isn't about ticking all those boxes. It's about being happy now and just reframing the way we see goals as well. Because I think we're all trained into having this milestone mentality, into focusing on the end goal. So, whatever the end goal is, people will say, oh, I have to meet my person by the time I'm 35, or I have
Mm-hmm.
to have a baby by this age, or I have
Mm-hmm.
to have this much money by this age. But they'll focus so much and panic so much about the end goal that they never focus on how they're going to get there. And, we haven't talked about social media yet, but it's a huge influence, particularly for this generation. We're talking about Gen Z, 20 somethings and under. And, I think that also reinforces that milestone mentality, because it's showing us constantly on a reel everybody's end goals, everybody's achievements. And it doesn't show us where they started from. And it doesn't show us how they got there. And it doesn't break down the steps. And, it just reinforces that panic of they're ahead of me, but I have no flipping clue how to get there. So often we have no trouble knowing what our goals are, vision boards and all that, great manifesting. But actually, it's about breaking down the small steps. So what I want to help people going on a journey on is instead of having that milestone mentality, become more process positive. So
Yeah.
okay, you're
Yeah.
trying to get to that goal, but what are the small, you're nodding. I think this is familiar territory for you.
Oh,
So,
well, yeah. I mean, it's always
it's
important to enjoy the journey and not just the end goal. But you're very, very right. You said something that's very, paramount or to this conversation is that we all have these milestones. And yeah, it's culture. And social
mm,
media is reinforcing that culture because, I have a daughter that's 36 and she has friends that are going around, I'm not married yet. I need a child. She has for one friend that just got to 40 and she is having this panic attack. I want to get married. I want to have children. And the time clock is ticking. And then, of course, when it comes to children, we have a biological stop, right? So, I mean, so yes, you're panicking about those things, your job, your whatever. So and then social media is really good at showing to you who is doing it. And then when you're
mm,
not, then you have, our topic today is about the Gen Z mental health crisis. And social media is feeding that. So it's kind of great that we're having this conversation that yeah, you don't have to do it in your 20s. You don't even have to do it in your 30s. You just have to feel good about yourself. And we didn't use the word wholeness, but when you're whole is you're self-sustained, right? And whether you're feeding from your career, whether you're feeding from your health, whether you're feeding from your spirituality, those things that you feed on. I like what you said about it's not just about money. And it reminded me about when I got into coaching. I was so surprised that almost all my coaching clients when I first started was coming into the coaching conversation is I've checked all those boxes, but I'm not feeling fulfilled, right? I'm missing
mm,
something. That's probably because, there's a saying that says that you lean your ladder up against the wrong wall. Because yes, you're climbing this ladder, you get to the top, you have the kid, you have the great marriage, but you're not feeling fulfilled. And I've come to realize that you don't actually feel fulfilled until you're serving, because I come from a spiritual background. And they all say that unless you're doing something for somebody, unless you're serving, like what we're doing here now, you're serving, and that's how you feel fulfilled. You're helping other people. Because if you just pile on the money and pile on the accolades and not serving humanity, you're not going to feel fulfilled. So I love that about, shifting the mindset and, putting it on. And even if you get to 60 and you haven't checked off those boxes, you should be asking yourself, am I fulfilled? Right? Am I fulfilled with all these things? Who says that I need to have? Because I know a lot of women that don't have kids, and people
yeah.
think that you should have kids, right? So, yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I definitely am one for celebrating the alternative path. You don't have to do
Yes,
any of those things. You don't have to do them in that order.
right.
You can just choose, you can just do you. Everybody, and there's no such thing as ahead or behind because we're all on our own unique path.
Yes.
So yeah, the squiggly path, what's been brilliant about the journey I've been on is mostly the people that I've been able to connect with. Both, I interviewed, as you said, lots and lots of incredible experts as part of my book, lots of coaches and psychologists and therapists and mindset experts. And what they all had in common is they pivoted at a later point in life. So none of them was doing the job at 40, 50, 60, 70 that they were doing at 30. So why now we're kind of pressurizing young people to figure out what they're going to do with their life and stick to it forever? I mean, we all already know that it's not realistic. And, I think it's really helpful to kind of share those squiggly success stories and, share our stories as older people with younger people and be like, I didn't have it figured out by 30 either. I didn't know what I was going to do until I was 40 or, I'm still pivoting, and I've had three different eras, three different, completely different careers now at the age of 40, and there'll probably be another one, So, real
Yeah.
people continue to prove that there are no deadlines on dreams. So why is society reinforcing the deadline? It's a false deadline.
Well, hopefully the conversation is changing. Like I said, I think the barometer from 30 is maybe moved to 40. Because yes, there was a time where girls were panicking if they're not married by 30. You're right. So right, they did like you, give the boyfriend an ultimatum. And guys don't
Yeah,
really like that.
no,
So
they do
that's
not. I
amazing.
can verify.
They don't like that at all. All right. So apparently, there's certain kinds of things that the Gen Z, which is the 20 something people, struggle with the most. You talk about bank. I didn't think that that was one of them from my experience because I didn't think that you're expected to have zeros in the bank account at in your 20s. But I know that they struggle with relationships. To me, that's the one that I see. So, in your experience, in your book, and what you've talked to millions of thousands of people, what are some of the things that this Gen Z, um, uh, you know, suffer struggle with the most as
Yeah,
far as
great question.
hierarchy?
Yeah, I mean, I can literally give you a hierarchy because I I am a geriatric millennial. I'm an older millennial, so I was acutely aware that the challenges I faced in my 20s might not be the same as those that current 20 somethings were facing. So I went back, I did this huge survey of 2,500 women in their 20s in the UK and the US, and I use a huge amount of data in my work because I'm a geek and I love that stuff. Um, and what was actually, incredible and also a bit sad is 95% of them had fears about the future. They had fears about getting older. And the biggest fears were, the number one fear was kind of aging itself, and the mental and physical health consequences that came along with aging. And this, particularly the focus on mental health and getting mentally resilient, that was a life goal that my generation didn't even think about. That was before mental health was really on the table for a conversation. So that was a huge shift that I saw between the two generations. So 10 years apart, and they were prioritizing their mental health, which I think is a great thing. But they're also struggling so much with their mental health. I mean, it was my survey was deliberately a complete cross section of every kind of woman from every kind of background, every socioeconomic group, every ethnicity, gender, sexual identity, everything. And they there was a huge amount of mental health struggle in my audience. Like half of them said the main feeling they had about the future was anxiety. And they've been called the anxious generation for that reason. Like anxiety, meaning fear for the future, is their defining experience. It's not the best days of their life. It's the anxious generation. So definitely fears about getting older. And I think what ties into that, you said about finance. Finance was the number two fear. So after kind of, I'm just scared about getting older. I'm scared about not having my head straight and mentally, physically declining. I'm scared that I'm never going to be financially secure. So this was another shift between my generation and the current generation. We as millennials were focused on making bank. We were focused on financial success. And to greater or lesser extent, some of us, we got there or not, however we define that. But the current generation are in a very different financial position. And I think I'm acutely aware that they genuinely are living in a different time where it is genuinely much more difficult to become financially secure. So Gen Z are so worried about money, but they're worried about being financially secure because financial success is a pipe dream. So many of them were saying things like, I'm still living at home, I can't afford rent, I've been sold a lie. I've gone through all this really expensive education, and
Hmm.
society told me I would get a great job at the end of it. And I have got a job with a great title, but I can't afford to pay my rent.
That's
So they
true.
were feeling incredibly disillusioned. And, they would talk about the price of housing. Rents are
Yeah.
incredibly high. The ratio between the average income and the cost of housing is like eight to one, 8 times at the average income now in most American cities. When my parents were buying a house, it was 3 to 1. So it genuinely is more difficult. I mean, it really grinds my gears when people will hate on this generation and say, you guys buy too many lattes, just stop going to Starbucks and you can buy a property. It is not true. Nobody ever bought a house by swerving Starbucks. I'm sorry to break the
Right,
bubble
right,
of the
right.
internet right now.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
so I think, what my work is a combination of reassuring young people that genuinely life is more difficult. I mean, there's always been the age old struggles of uncertainty and getting your life figured out. But now layered on top of that is really difficult financial situation. The economic environment has changed. the social media landscape. This is the first generation born on the internet, and they were exposed to the internet at a crucial time when their brains were not even fully formed. It's been widely sort of reported that the whole generation have had their brains rewired by the internet. And they've just, it's really been terrible and really, really detrimental to their mental health. So I've got huge, huge sympathy for this generation because they genuinely are having it harder than we are. And I think
Yeah.
it's so easy to, as older people, to kind of look back and say, "Oh, you've got no responsibilities. This is the best days of your life. Just stop worrying or whatever." But it really is a difficult time, and it's a different time, which is why I wanted to like make sure I reinforced everything with real data about what's happening right now.
Wow. Wow. Yes, you are. I mean, that was really news to me. But it's not that you didn't know it, which is why I love the word awareness, because we all walk around and there's things that are happening right beside us, but we weren't really aware of it. When I talked about you, when you talk about, they're worried about bank, I'm thinking they're worried about, you know, a 401k, or you guys don't have that in the UK, but in
Yeah.
America, there's, something that you put away for retirement.
Yeah, like a pension, we'd
Right,
call
right.
it.
Or they're worried about how much money they have in their bank, but you brought it home. It's very, very true, right? That housing is so important and they really can't afford it because,
Mm.
right, and they have to live at home or they have to, room or something. But yeah, financial security. I mean, it's a different label, but it's
Yeah.
very true. It's very true.
And the challenge is with so many of these life goals, they're kind of stacked together and they're kind of contingent on each other. So, when I did my research about, does this generation want to have children? I was surprised for how few of them they intended to have kids during this decade, before they turned 30. But when I unpicked all the data, it wasn't that they didn't want kids. It was that they felt that they would never be
Never
financially
hold them.
secure enough to
Right.
support a family.
Yeah.
So it's really dialing it back. And then, it gets into relationships. You know, there is a huge relationship gap. Number three in the list of anxieties is
Yes.
relationships. I can't find a partner. And
Right.
that, for so many reasons, is getting harder as well. There are so
Yes.
many more, half the population of women is now single. That's having a
Yes.
knock on effect. It's holding people back from being able to afford housing because it's a single income. There is a
Hmm.
single tax. It's stopping them from having children. So they're kind of doing this
You're
like
depressing me.
I'm stressing you out, Myrna. I'm sorry. We'll get on to more
I
positive
know, no,
topics.
no. It's like I said, this awareness thing, we're not aware of it, but it's wow. But everything you're saying is very true. My goodness. Keep going.
Yeah, it's about, it's really just for me about understanding the why, not the headline. Oh, Gen Z are snowflakes. Well, why are they lacking in resilience? It's because of this crazy world that they've been exposed to at such a formative age.
Yes.
Why are
Wow.
they not wanting to have children? Well, unpicking it, it's because they can't find a relationship and they can't afford it. Let's
Right.
solve those problems first. Let's not just say you've got to have babies. They're not in the
Wow.
position or they don't feel in the position.
Wow. Wow. Like I said, wow, it is so true. And we can go down the list of all the different things. You come out of college, you mentioned one, you spend a lot of
Mm.
money. Yeah, my daughter has got like over $100,000 worth of student loans. You come out and you have to find a job and you have to pay those student loans back, and then you have to have housing. And then when you go for housing, they put that student loan on your credit, and then you've got to be able to afford housing with that debt in there. There's so
Hmm.
many different things that we can that's causing the mental health crisis, the anxiety. And then yeah, so how are they finding love? They got to be on these on these online dating apps
Apps.
that men are just swiping. I mean, it is yes, yes, it is. I mean, okay, so for curiosity's sake, what are some of the other things? Because we've talked before now that I know. Give me some of the other things that's on your data report.
Yeah, so we've talked about, health fears, mental health fears, financial fears, relationship fears.
Relationships,
I mean, related to
housing.
finances is
Okay.
housing.
Hmm.
And then we go into, family, fear of having a family. And I think that's a really tricky one because as you mentioned, this is the only life goal on which there is genuinely an expiration date.
Yeah.
But what keeps it super spicy is nobody gets to know when their own expiration date is going to be. So, you might be running out of time when you're 30, but you might be running out of time when you're 50, or, technology is incredible right now. So, that is a really difficult one. And often that is the hard stop that women have in mind. That is the deadline. They'll set a deadline. I need to have kids by 35. And they'll do
Yes.
that terrible backward math thing. If you remember that scene in Friends where Rachel's turning 30 or something and she's going, "Oh, I need to have kids by 35, so I need to meet the guy by 33, so I need to be with them at 32. So oh my God, I'm already out of time. I'm already
Yeah.
falling behind."
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
such a common like math that women particularly
Hmm.
will do. And
Hmm.
it's that looming, that threat of the biological clock, which, there is something real in that. But for most 20 somethings, that is not a pressing issue. You definitely, if you're not going to become, for most of us, luckily, you're not going to be out of business by the time you turn 30. So putting that pressure on yourself when really it might be not a priority for you right now or not a feasibility right now doesn't help. So I think what's really helpful is not saying, "I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to meet someone. I'm never going to have a baby. Never, never, never." Very kind of dismissive, these crazy things. Say, "Well, I'm not going to do that for the next 5 years. That's not a priority right now. I'll reevaluate that in 3 to 5 years. I'll revisit that," but not piling all of those pressures on yourself at the same time when you're not in a position to kind of be making those kind of big decisions
Right,
right now.
right, right. Well, it's really interesting. I was one of my favorite books on that topic was I was reading this book by Rebel Wilson. And of course, she was a late bloomer. She didn't even have a boyfriend at 35. She never had a boyfriend at 35. So she decided to go freeze her eggs. And the doctor looked at
Yeah.
her and said, You're already out of eggs." And she's thinking, what? So that's the new conversation now. We always thought that you have eggs until you're menopausal, which is 45, 50, but now they're telling you you're out of eggs at 35. So yes, there is a pressure. Amazing. I tell you, this is the pressing conversation. All right. Right. So now, traditionally, we always thought that the 20s were supposed to be the best years of your life. It's when you're supposed to have fun, you're supposed to travel the world, you're supposed to go to school, and but now it's you're saying it's a myth. It's not the best years of your life. Why? Why have we changed that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think it was never the best days of anyone's life. Like, I haven't spoken to anybody who was like, "My 20s, they were just a riot. I was stress-free. I was chilled out." It is such a stressful decade. And it's because it is the decade of uncertainty. Everything, like we said earlier, every part of your life is up in the air. You don't know who you're going to end up with, whether you're going to find your path in life, whether you're going to have friends, whether you're going to find your city. Everything is up for grabs, and there's a huge amount of stress that comes along with uncertainty. Human beings, we're hardwired to hate uncertainty. If you feel uncertain out in the wild back in the day, something was probably coming to kill and eat you, right? The external threats might not be quite so, visceral right now, but it feels that way. It feels like, oh my God, I have to have it all figured out. And what compounds it is you are going along thinking you're the only one. So everybody I've spoken to, they're like, "Oh, everybody else has it all figured out." It's amazing stats. So like 62% of women in their 20s think that other people find life easier than them. And only 3 or 4% think they find life easier than other people. So
Mm.
everybody's just going along thinking everyone else knows what they're doing. Everybody else has this whole life thing figured out. I'm the only one who's struggling, who's stuck, who's confused, who's overwhelmed, who's stressed out and anxious. And actually, that is the most common experience. And there's so much research to support that. It really is the decade of uncertainty. And it's all part of the process. That is how we make our priorities. That's how we kind of figure life out. It's supposed to be, the messy middle. But somehow we all internalize this vision of, we're young, we're free, we're beautiful in our 20s. So we should therefore be happy. And that's, of course,
Yeah.
not what makes you happy. Some level of comfort and certainty for most people is what makes them feel more certain. You'll feel certain when life is more certain is kind of a mantra that we hear a lot.
Yeah. Well, hey, you're dialing back all my myths here. So
Maybe, I mean, how were your 20s, Myrna? Maybe they were the halcyon days. Maybe they were the best.
yeah, yeah. Well, yes, I'm a 60s baby. So, when in my 20s, I mean, I don't remember being stressed and all that, but you're right. It's a different generation now. You just mentioned that the millennial generation is different from the Gen Z generation because I didn't have any internet and I didn't have all these different things. And like I told you, that I was just thinking I was just going to get married. No stress.
Yeah, just one choice. I mean, there's this, if you've read that brilliant book, it's quite old now. It's called The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. And it says that, humans, we feel instinctively like having lots of choice is a great thing, but it's actually pretty stressful. I mean, think about when you walk into like a ice cream store and there's like 3,000 flavors. And as much as you're excited for that ice cream and all these options, it's actually pretty stressful to make that choice.
Yeah.
And, you
Mhm.
know, I think young people now they're told and they see so many different visions of what life can look like and so
Mhm.
many different visions of success. And you can
Mhm.
be anything, you can do whatever you want. And that's
Yes.
actually really stressful. It puts
Yes.
a lot more pressure on them than just saying you can do this, this, and this. You can get married, you can do this. You know,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not wanting to dial back the clock on women's emancipation, but I
No.
just want to
Yes.
make everybody aware that like more choice doesn't mean more happiness. It actually
No.
means more stress.
They're actually not happy now that you've brought it to my awareness because it's very true. It's not, they're not happy. There's got a lot of uncertainty. They don't like living at home and they have to live at home. They can't find a relationship, which usually is what settles you down. But yes, I mean, it is. I'm glad that we're having this conversation and we're making it, awareness. And I like what you said about this conversation is not just for the Gen Z, but for the parents of the Gen Z so they can understand. Because if I had a 20 something year old, I would look at it totally different now. I mentioned my daughter's 36. But yeah, I mean, when she was going through her 20s, she was also trying to figure out what career is the right one, getting married, all these other different things that makes it topsy-turvy world. So that's amazing. All right, so tell us about your book. It's called 30 Phobia: Why Your 20s Suck and How to Get Unstuck. Why did you write it, and what do you want readers to walk away with after reading? I think we've talked about that during this conversation, but if we've missed anything, you can add it here.
Sure. So I'll flash it up here.
Okay.
Phobia, why your 20s suck and how to get unstuck. And that's kind of is what it says on the tin, really. It's an essential survival guide for quarter lifers in crisis and those who parent them. I highly recommend if you have someone in your 20s that you're parenting, this is a really helpful book
Mhm.
because it's just very reassuring. A lot of self-help books I think can inadvertently pile on the pressure. How to be successful in this amount of time. I'm so successful. This is how to be like me. This is not the book I've written. It is if you feel like you're failing or flailing or falling behind, you're just feeling stuck wherever you're at in life. I'm going to show you all the reasons why you're completely not alone and you're absolutely normal. Whether you're, turning 30 or 40 or 50 and you're still single, you haven't got a baby, you haven't got a house, you haven't got the money, you haven't done the shoulds of society. I'm going to show you that you're not alone. I'm going to give you the data that proves that there's so many people in the same boat. So I hope that's very reassuring. And I'm going to share all the kind of messy, squiggly success stories of my life and all the women I've worked with to put this book together. And I'm going to give you the best, really easy and simple mindset hacks to help you start to get unstuck. So, whatever is keeping you awake at night, whether it's not being in a relationship or not having your finances figured out, I've spoken to some incredible experts that have shared some really simple, achievable for anyone tips about how to kind of shift your mindset, how to prioritize, and how to start moving in the right direction in really small inch stones. It's not about go for the moon or whatever. It's like, okay, if that's where you want to get, that's fine, but let's break it down. Let's take a beat. Let's break it down. Here are the small steps. Here are the things you can control that are going to make you feel more in control of your life. So you're going to feel reading this book, you're going to feel really reassured. You're going to have a few laughs and you're going to have some really actionable tips. There's even a section where you can start to like reframe your goals and put a bit of a to-do list together. So it's really a useful piece of work.
I love it. As you were talking, a vision flashed in front of my mind of, you know, um, what's his name? Anyway, I blank on the name, but the quote is that you You climb the staircase, even though you're only seeing the first step. You're not seeing the full thing. So I love your analogy of little baby steps. You don't know how you're gonna, by 35 find the man, but these are some of the things that you can, baby steps that you can do to keep going in that goal. And it also made me think of hope because a lot of times when you're feeling unstuck, I mean, when you're feeling stuck, it's because you're thinking it's not going to happen, right? That's the
Yeah.
pressure. You're feeling it's not going to happen. But when you give someone hope that, hey, it can happen, you also give them data of people that it's happened for because that's why God gives you a test so that you can have a testimony, so you can encourage someone. So I love the concept of your book, and yeah, 30 phobia. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I remember my daughter telling me that when she gets to 21, she was going to throw up because back then 21 was old for them. You know what I mean? And people say the same thing. When I get to 30, I'm going to be so depressed, because that's their mindset,
Yeah,
that's
it's
old.
because it's crazy. I mean, something crazy happens around milestone birthdays, whether it's 30, 40, 50, 60. It kind of triggers this internal life audit where you compare where you're at in life with where you expected to be at this age.
Mhm.
And we all do it. It's an unconscious thing, and it makes us really stressed out and miserable if we do. And the
Yeah.
reality is, those deadlines are not real. Like, spoiler alert, there is no deadline on dreams. The world is not going to explode if you don't have a ring on it by
Oh,
30. Happened to me, didn't explode, I promise.
right.
So it's really, it's funny how we put all these pressures on ourselves, and some of them are real, but a lot of them are not real. They're just kind of internalized from these kind of societal norms and these traditional timelines, some of which are out of date, which is what you keep referring to. The
Yes.
goals are shifting, but it's why a lot of people will say, "Well, I'm turning 40, but I really related to this," or "I'm turning 50, but I related to this," because
Yeah.
the principles are all the same.
Yes.
You've got that milestone birthday, you're doing
Yes.
that kind of terrible internal audit that's making you feel like you're failing or falling behind, and this
Yes.
book will help you just let go of all of those timelines and deadlines and just build a life that really fits for you.
Yes, and one of the things that you said that I didn't comment on is that the 20s people are afraid of aging or getting old. And it's true. They think 40 is old. Or that old person in 40. Now the 60-year-olds are, acting like 40s. They're saying 40, 60 is the new 40. So yes, the timelines are changing, culture is changing. But yeah, the Gen Z generation is having it the worst because of all these they're different, and you're right, they're the internet age, and they're the problem with the financial age and housing age and all these different things. I love what you said that now it's 8 to 1 as far as income and affordability. And in our parents' time, it was 3 to 1 because yeah, houses were 35,000. Now they're 350,000. So yes, and all these things that we just have to give them sympathy. We just have to give them space to grow. I love your book, giving them hope and encouragement. That could be the title too, hope and encouragement, and tips to take the small steps, change your mindset that it can happen. I will tell you, I'm living my best life now. And I'm in my 60s. It can happen.
Exactly,
It can
exactly. And
happen,
so many women I've spoken to, they really didn't find true fulfillment until later in life. And, we need to normalize that squiggly path, and priorities change and opportunities come. And it's just, I mean, wouldn't life be so boring if you had it all figured out by 30 and just lived the same day every day in, day out till
I
you were
know, like
like
groundhog.
95?
Yes, yes. Challenges make life exciting. So if we're going to leave that one note, yes, challenges make life exciting. So awesome.
Yeah. And if you struggle for something, if you work for something,
Mhm.
the feeling of achievement is so much sweeter. And really, the only way, that this generation struggles a lot with confidence, self-confidence. And the only way to build confidence is through competence. It's through just going through it, doing it, giving it a go,
Yes,
failing, trying again, pivoting. We've all done it. And, you come out the other side stronger for it. So that struggle, it is making you stronger in itself. So
yes, of
it's
course.
kind of meant to be hard. It is for everybody. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yes. Very, very true. Very, very true. Awesome. So tell our listeners and those watching on TV how they can connect with you. Give us your website, your social media handles, and of course, I'll link out to them on the show page.
Of course. So my website is kateburski.com. That's also where you can download that free resource, the Mind Hacker cards, if you want to dip a toe in the water and have a little fun trying to figure out your priorities and get yourself unstuck. So that's kateburski.com. You can find me on Instagram at Kate Burski as well. And you can find my book, 30 Phobia, on Amazon right
Yes, of course. Every book is on Amazon. Anyone worth reading, anyway.
now.
Amazing, Kate. Listen, I enjoyed our conversation. As Oprah would say, I had a lot of aha moments, things that we don't focus on, things that we're not aware of. And that's basically what consciousness is all about, is becoming aware because we all walk around and just be, like a walking around and we're not aware of, the other person's struggles. We're just focused on our lives and understanding is very important. So yes, that is an excellent book for, the Gen Z generation, for them to have some hope and encouragement and some tips in order to navigate the 30 phobia. It's also good for parents to pick up a copy and, gift it to your child and also, read it yourself so that you can be that support for them when they need it. So I'm going to have a short summary of my conversation with Kate on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will also link out to her book and link out to her website and social media handles. So if forgotten it from this conversation, you can head there and just click on the link. Kate, has been a wonderful conversation. Love your message. Glad that I was able to share it with my audience. So as we wrap up, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, just my mantra. There's no deadlines on dreams. No such thing as ahead or behind. You are right on time.
Yes, I love it. I love that. I love that. You're right on time. Yes, and I would add to that, God doesn't work on your time, it works on his time. So you might think
That's it.
that you're supposed to do something by your 30, but God's got other plans for you, and his plan is the best one. All right. So
Yeah. Yeah. It might not be what you expect, but it just might be better.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. All right, guys. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. Today, we're talking about transforming the Gen Z mental health crisis and giving them hope that they don't have to fear their 30s because a lot of good things happen, like Kate did, between her 30s and 40s. She became a multi-millionaire, not just a millionaire, multi-millionaire. So if it can happen for her, it can
Can
happen
happen
for
to
you.
anyone.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, namaste.
Namaste.